makers, and we'll definitely come back to your examples in a moment. But before we do, finally, I'd like to introduce our fourth panelist, and thanks so much for joining us, Dr. Angela Donaggio, who's the founder of the Virtuous Company Consultancy, which I love the name of that company, and also a professor of corporate governance at various top educational organizations. Dr. Donaggio, if you could tell us more about your experience, both as a female leader in academia and also as a founder of your business. Welcome.
Thank you. I'd like to thank you for this honorable invitation and greet the executive directors, advisors, and management representatives that are here, and also the organization of this meeting and the amazing women in this panel with me. Well, I have worked and studied and taught corporate governance and gender for the past 15 years, and I've been interacting with women from all corporate hierarchies and seeing the gaps in the corporate pipeline that cause many competent women to leave the corporate world. I see, and research also shows, that those most committed to work typically do not leave it of their own free will, but because they cannot endure so many years without due recognition. They suffer institutional and organizational discrimination of all kinds. In this sense, it's important to note that more than 90% of violence against women in the workplace is microaggression. For example, slights, indignities, put-downs, insults, and comments that undermine women's confidence and health to the point of causing chromosomal changes. For instance, Black women in the United States who live in biased environments have shortened telomeres, an essential part that highlights the quality of the chromosome, showing that the suffering caused by daily violence shortens the lives of these women by around 7 years. 7 years. Many of those who are expelled by the corporate environment become entrepreneurs, not by choice, but by financial need. Only a rare few who have a support network and resources to bear the burden of care and so many decades of corporate microaggressions reach senior positions. And there's a tendency to think that bias will decrease as they have proven themselves to get into the top. But biases continue. In general, research shows that female directors usually prepare much more for board meetings than men. One reason is because they know they will face greater scrutiny of their ideas. And despite preparing more, research shows that they are more judged by their tone of voice or communication style. Therefore, they end up adopting behaviors different from their true selves. One example comes from a female director whom I mentored. She confided in me that she was called a little dove by her peers at board meetings. Another director from my network got tired of being interrupted and belittled by her peers all the time without being able to finish a thought, to the point that she decided to quit from a board after years of effort. A third one said a few years ago she used men's perfume to try not to be perceived as a woman by her peers. And to conclude, when I asked a former CEO of a large financial institution from Europe and Latin America, when did she stop being called girl in the corporate setting? Now she's over 65 years old and a multinational board member. She replied, Angela, I'm still called a girl in board meetings. Despite this disappointing evidence, there's been some improvements over the years. As one female director from Fortune 1000 said, the stage with one woman is the invisibility phase on the board. The stage with two women is the conspiracy phase. If women sit next to each other, if they got to the ladies' room together, the guys wonder what the women are up to. 3 women are mainstream. It is normal to have women in the room, and those questions go away. I will leave solutions for later, given my time allocation, okay?
Okay, thanks so much, Dr. Donaggio. And I think you've brought to life with some very real day-to-day examples and strategies that women are facing in the leadership realm. So thank you for that. So we're going to dive a bit deeper into some specific questions for each of our panelists. And I'm actually going to stay with you, Dr. Donaggio, and we'll focus on corporate leadership. And it'd be great if you could expand on some of those examples and share with us some of the strategies, some of the successful strategies that are being deployed to help women advance in corporate leadership, and some of the evidence that either you've led or you've worked on for increasing women's representation on boards.
Okay, so we are talking about a systemic and complex problem. So there is no silver bullet capable of solving it. Linear thinking cannot resolve issues of a non-linear world. We must understand it as a complex problem that hinders our prosperity and the development of more intelligent and sustainable societies. I see several initiatives that have generated greater, clear positive results. Beyond tokenism, that is to assign only one woman on the board and think it's already diverse, the appointment of more than 30% of women in senior management positions, that is boards and C-level, it is obviously very important because women's voices in these environments stop being heard in a stereotypical way and start to be listened to on an equal basis. Our research published in 2018 by IFC entitled Women in Business Leadership Boost ESG Performance clearly showed that when women are listened to on an equal basis as board members or C-level executives, it ends up significantly improving ESG practices of these firms. This research, by the way, was widely quoted and referenced, but importantly, it was used as a reference by NASDAQ in its filing of proposed rule change to adopt listing rules related to board diversity to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission in 2020. In addition, IFC has carried out worthy initiatives focusing on increasing women on boards and in business leadership, like their WBBL program that paved the way for future work in this space. Despite these efforts, it is important to remember that a homogeneous group hardly perceives itself as homogeneous. Let me use a real example. I was evaluating the quality of governance practices of a board of directors of one of the largest, if it is not the largest, medical cooperative in the world with 17 million users. In the board's self-evaluation, I asked them to evaluate themselves from 0 to 5 in terms of diversity. I expected a very low grade. The result was that all board members gave themselves the highest score, 5. Now, the interesting thing is that the board was composed by 13 people, all of them Brazilian, all of them male, all of them without disabilities, all of them heterosexual, one Black, and amazingly, all of them with the same schooling. They were all doctors. A homogeneous group does not perceive itself as homogeneous because it focuses on subtle differences within itself. The recurrency of homogeneous groups in positions of power is one of key reasons that brought us here at the limits of the planetary boundaries, threatening our survival as a species. We need heterogeneous, diverse, and inclusive groups to create inclusive and effective solutions. We need collective intelligence. We need diversity of thought and representation in powerful positions. And to sustain this, we need psychological safety. How to do this? After years of research and experience on the topic, I understand that 3 solutions can make the structural difference we need in addition to other strategies. The first one, quota laws. Today, around 30 countries have quota laws for women on boards, whether publicly listed companies, large or state-owned enterprises. No matter which country has instituted quotas for board diversity, the initiative remains a controversial strategy for refreshing boards and ensuring equitable representation of corporate stakeholders. When my co-authors and I went to Federal Senate of Brazil to present a draft law on quotas for women in state-owned enterprises in 2010, we were the only ones to defend the initiative. The Brazilian institutions were eminently against it, without any empirical or conceptual basis. In my view, it was a huge opportunity loss. As Donella Meadows, a pioneer in systems thinking, used it to say, to act only when a problem becomes obvious is to miss an important opportunity to solve it. 15 years later, Brazil continues to be stagnated in terms of the number of women on boards. Many countries that have adopted and enforced quota laws have achieved good outcomes in terms of representation. In all countries where there was the debate on quota laws, those against it said there were no competent women to take on the tasks. After the law, however, these women simply emerged, like a spontaneous generation of qualified women. Of course, it's not the case. They had just been invisible until then. Fortunately, a minority begins to understand the objective of affirmative action. They seek to create a change, be transitory to resolve an inequality that the market by itself has already proven incapable of solving. We must help both men and women become more aware of this challenge. And the quota laws will only work if governments impose strict deadlines for compliance and strong sanctions for non-compliance. Increasing the number of women on boards has proven a virtuous cycle effect on all corporate structure, as we have shown in our research mentioned earlier and in scientific studies such as Freedoms that analyzed 20,000 US companies over more than 10 years and showed that greater representation of women on boards had the effect of increasing the number of women in middle management and, in turn, reduced organizational stereotypes. Second, promoting diversity as a responsibility of male leaders. It is essential to engage male corporate leaders in actively increasing the number of female board directors in senior management. Since most CEOs and board members all over the world are men, no real progress in increasing women in corporate leadership will happen without the visible leadership and engagement of male business leaders. Men are also more likely to listen to other men. The tone at the top is key to encourage the culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Australia provides a model with a group of CEOs across industries called the Male Champions of Change, who came together with advanced gender equality across their organizations, and most importantly, to act as public advocates. Combined with the stock exchange's board diversity listing requirement and activities by other groups, there has been real momentum in appointing more women to the boards of companies. The percentage of women on ASX 200 boards was 5% in 2009 and now is 34%. Third, last but not least, the role of multilateral investment banks, government development banks, and pension funds. These institutions should bind their equity stakes to contractual clauses, ensuring minimal gender equity on boards of companies in which they invest. Given the volume of investment made by development banks and pension funds, they are in a unique position to influence the board composition of companies in which they have equity stakes. As key providers of finance, they can take an active role in promoting gender diversity in these companies. They can do so either by requesting board seats equivalent to their investment stake in a company to be filled by women, or by adding a diversity clause in a contract agreement, such as shareholder agreements that ensures a certain percentage of female directors on their boards after a certain grace period. Furthermore, we must remember that the care economy must be valued as essential as it is for society, global society. We don't need any more romantic overcoming stories. We need various injustices to stop being present and become part of the past for all women. We need to change the paradigm to really impact positively the world. Quoting the philosopher Angela Davis, we have to talk about liberating minds as well as liberating society. So let's liberate our minds. If you will, you can close your eyes. Let's imagine there is a tool, a magic tool that can be a solution for better environmental, social, and governance practices for companies, more harmonized and stable societies, and even less corporate fraud. That tool exists. There is a plethora of research that shows a strong correlation between gender diversity in their senior ranks and better financial performance, no matter which country conducted these studies. Beyond that, better ESG performance, sustainable performance. It will be wise to start to use it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was so rich. And